Good afternoon. This is Ben Yarbrough, CEO at Calyptix Security, and today I'm thrilled to bring you a number of members from our team, our founder, Lawrence Teo, our head of sales, Chris Pallone, and also Aaron Bieber, who's an arachnoid and enthusiast there and a senior developer. He's been very involved with the new project with Gatekeeper, as are a number of others. Lawrence has been sort of architect and a project coordinator and writing a lot of code. And so we're bringing these guys to you. They've worked with a number of members on the beta team. So we'll start with you, Aaron. Say hello.
Hello.
Aaron's coming to us from frosty Colorado. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, we got about, it was almost 100 on Monday, and Tuesday it dropped to about 32 degrees, and now we're sitting at about 36, 37. So it's been interesting.
Needless to say, these are times of change, and you're
yes
on that front. And then we've got Lawrence, who is in his home development studio. Lawrence, say hello.
Hi all, glad to be here.
Lawrence will be chiming in and really looking forward to feedback and questions. Chris, I know you're excited for the fall and football. Tell us what's going on in your end of the world.
Well, first and foremost, version 5 has been part of my life for the last few months, and I'm really excited that we're coming to market with it. And I'm looking forward to helping all my partners out to get this product in their hands and help them be successful, and also to some cooler weather and a little chance to do some grilling. As I see, I'm a grill master there. But
you got to give away a few grilling tools last promo. This promo,
yeah, we've been focusing on the tailgating aspect of the promos, and there seems to be a lot of interest in that. And Ben's got some swag he wants to talk about soon. So anyway, we look forward to you guys getting to know what we're doing.
It's coming up to hunting season, so let us know if you guys need some hats, shirts, t-shirts. We've got lots of t-shirts, lots of hats, some golf shirts for those that golf. But we're real excited about Gatekeeper. I think it's a tool that you guys will find very effective, and we're looking for more feedback to continue to grow it. Today, we're going to kind of talk about why build Gatekeeper. We're going to give you an overview. Aaron's going to go through the requirements to implement it and the deployment scenarios currently available. We'll chat a little bit about future roadmap and some ideas. No hard, firm commitments, but really some exciting opportunities. And then we're going to let you know how you can get it, both with a new solution as well as with those units in the field. And then, of course, the ever-pressing question is, how much does it cost? And usually that is, what's the price? But the cost is extremely low when you take into account the amount of time you're going to have to spend to implement this, maintain it, and the value that it's going to deliver for your clients and you. So why Gatekeeper? Well, basically, we all know that when you open a port to the internet, it creates real exposure. And we've learned over the last few years that the threat is very real, and we'll go into some data, some advisories, and things that most of you guys should know very well. And lastly, we want to share with you the partner requests, the guidance, the insights that really prompted us over the last several years to build this tool. This is not something that we're just whipping up and it's just a tack-on feature. This is a fundamental new feature that is vastly different than I think what you'll see in the marketplace in the SMB space. So in terms of the network exposure, typical scenario here, you've got to open a port to get to a machine inside a network. That's all good and well, except for when you make that port forward rule, guess what? Mr. Attacker over there can see it as well. So we all know that within about minutes, 5 minutes to 30 minutes, he's found it, he's probing it, he's trying to hit it from wherever he can. Once he finally does get it, he's going to go after your domain controller. RAs try to escalate credentials and broaden your position inside a network, and he's going to find whatever asset your client might have, whether it's data, credit card numbers, or otherwise. Assets are assets. It might even be just infrastructure. So he's going to get that. After he gets that, he's done inside. Most small businesses become the pawns in cyber hacks, espionage, and extortion. And they begin to use your tool to attack on the outside. So if you don't help your clients address this problem now, I can almost assure you that someone else will tell them they need to address it once it's too late. That's a sad fact, but it is. So the goal is to not let that attacker even have the opportunity to get a foothold in your client's network by exposing systems. And why would we need to do that? Well, the vulnerabilities, God knows the advisories, the data, the breach data, what it cost us. So here's a quick look at the RDP vulnerabilities. This is more detail than you want to go into, but CVE score 2.0, 10, 10, 10. If you go to the secondary vulnerabilities, 10 and 10. So that's, it's a challenge. RDP is a very effective tool, but it is very poor from an authentication and security exposure standpoint. Notwithstanding this reality, Shodan, most folks know, surveys the internet for different types of systems. They've been tracking RDP for a long time, showing millions of exposed ports. And this is only the exposure on 3389. And we all know that when people deploy RDP, they typically expose it via a different port. So I think this is only a tip of the iceberg in terms of what's out there in the marketplace. You'll notice also the escalating trends since COVID. Advisories. When do they matter? Lawrence and I went to a cyber intel event not too long ago. I'm going to see if I can adjust this camera a little bit. Probably not. But, and they said, well, when the FBI talks, it's important. When the NSA talks, it's really important. When they all three talk, if you're not doing something about it, this is when the lawyer in me tells you that you're being negligent. And if you consider yourself a professional IT person and you're allowing a client to continue to use RDP exposed without protecting yourself in the form of a consent and waiver, you have some exposure personally, financially, reputationally. So the FBI has told us to stop it in 2018, 2019, the NSA, most recently, DHS. Interestingly, more recently, DHS has also identified VPN products, clients, and servers also have vulnerabilities, Citrix, so forth. Very large vendors that run VPNs have vulnerabilities that are exposed. Now let's look at the data. This is not anybody's data. This is Calyptix data from Calyptix sites. This is a data-driven tool that we have built for you. 91% of inbound probes, attacks, scans in the last month, 31 days of August, were targeting RDP. Again, 91% of all inbound stuff is looking for RDP. So we know it's a target. We know it's a problem, and we know the threat is real. That's why we've been working very hard to build this tool over the last several years. When you drill down into that data a little bit, it's interesting. People often say, well, let's just block the non-US stuff. And that's effective. I mean, that would cover 99% of those 175 million events in August. However, it only covers about 19%. I mean, it leaves 19% of the known infrastructure used for those attacks alone. So it doesn't get everything. Gets you a lot of the way there. But the guys that are going stealthily and slowly are still there. So then you look at the top sources. Russia is just hammering away. They represent 54% of the events and 25% of the source IPs last month on our own data that we know about. This, again, this is not speculative. This is not somebody else's data. These are our customers. In terms of the United States, it's a very small amount. It was only 760 so source IPs, but it represented about 19%. What's interesting to me, compare the source of US versus China, and that's quite telling. So forgot the action here on my points. China is got a very low number there, but they're steady, and it actually parallels the U.S. And then the unknown IPs, those are IPs that are not registered with any specific registrar, ARIN or APNIC or the other organizations under the ICANN that are responsible for registering IPs. So they don't have a specified country, but we need to take those into account as well. But the parallel in rate between the U.S. and China, to me, is an interesting parallel in terms of the number of events per day. And so when you look at that, again, Russia, 99% of their activity inbound is RDP. They're after your money. China, on the other hand, is looking at a few things. They're also looking more broadly for anything they can find, and phone systems. And then lastly, they're doing a lot of other stuff. But that low number, only the million events, to me, suggests that they're coming at us from those other countries. They're finding other ways to proxy their inbound probes and traffic. So then why does this really matter? Let's talk consequences. And this is not our data. This is a firm that focuses on ransomware remediation. I can't validate the quality or the volume of data. They've been doing it for a while, seems to get a lot of attention. But they show that roughly, over half of ransomware compromises have been coming from RDP, and it's on the rise. And when you look at compromises by size of business, we play in the 1 to 100 space. That's our bread and butter. Most of our partners, that's their bread and butter. And if you look at it, according to Coveware, that's 80% of ransomware infections are through RDP. Seems to make sense why Russia's spending 99% of their effort there if it's effective. But look at the payoff. It's big. I'm not ready to write a $178,000 check this week for ransomware. How many of your clients are? That's real money. The other item here was partner request, and Lawrence spent a little bit of time talking to partners at trade shows, during support calls, during beta sessions over the last year. Lawrence, I mean, when you talk to partners, what was your experience?
Yeah, so when I met partners at trade shows and like Ben said, support calls, face-to-face meetings, like one of the things that they frequently ask for is a way for their end users to access their workstations safely and easily. And that's a tough problem. Like, I mean, on one hand, you could use a VPN, and most users do, but VPN clients tend to be hard to use, clunky, so some end users don't like them. But then on the other hand, if you expose RDP to the world, it's bad, like Ben just showed. And end users, as we all know, they prize convenience over many other things, and they like RDP a lot. And I totally understand why, because RDP is very fast, very performant, and very convenient. It also offers very tight integration with Windows and that other remote access protocols don't. So yeah, so anyway, that's roughly what I heard. And like I say, it's a tough problem because whenever we talk about security and convenience, it's always, security or convenience, pick one. It's hard to pick two. But I believe that when you see the rest of what we're going to present, I strongly believe that with Gatekeeper, we're providing both security and convenience in one single package. So I highly encourage you to look into it. I once heard somebody in InfoSec say something along the lines of, the only things that an attacker can do in your network are what you let them. So, but I believe that, so don't let them do that to your network, use something like Gatekeeper to block them out. So
I think those are great comments, and I think when you think about the effectiveness of RDP over the years, I mean, it's free, widely available. It works well. Customers use it, they love it, and so I can understand why they're resistant to change, especially when they don't have the understanding of the threat. Now it's very real, and so they're having to grapple with it. So we think this tool is extremely timely. And at the end of the day, we think it has the opportunity to be, together with RDP, your work from home solution when we need it most. You block unauthorized users. Even if the credentials are stolen, it gets blocked. Obviously, probe scans, botnets, they're stopped. All those brute force attacks, even targeted attacks that are locking clients out of their systems, you have to go reset. You can block those. It layers on two-factor, free, depending on which authenticator app you use. There's no application to install to do that. Just activate Gatekeeper. You've eliminated exposing these systems from the internet. So even if they are vulnerable, access to them is significantly curtailed. You eliminate the costly, clunky, frustrating VPN clients. So the cost of supporting the remote user goes way down. That matters, right? How much time it takes. What do you have to do? Do you have to update that VPN client and so forth? Best of all, you don't have to stress about RDP vulnerabilities in general. You always got to worry about it. And so we think the peace of mind it brings to our partners, knowing to do the right thing, is very powerful. So let's turn and take a quick look at it. But before I do that, I'm going to answer a question. I am not upside down, Aaron. Am I upside down on your camera?
You are not upside down.
All right, good. So going forward here, what is it? I'm going to show you a diagram of it, and then we'll give you a little user video, Lord willing. We think if you understand it before you see it, you'll value it more, and then Aaron's going to go into how you can set it up at a high level. There is a lot more content on the portal for you. This is merely an overview. So the basic premise is that you grant remote users access to a specific internal resource, currently either by RDP or SSH. It does that through integrating with Active Directory and implementing the multi-factor authenticator app component to it. And it creates a single-use, short-lived firewall rule that only allows that user to access that resource. So back to Lawrence's point, only allow the user what they need to do what they need. So first we identify the user, then we enable the access. So guess what? An attacker who is not able to identify himself as a user doesn't get access to the system. Best of all, no client software. Of course, other than the RDP client. We're piggybacking on that. We want to acknowledge that. Which then allows it to support a lot of different systems. I even use my phone. God knows I'm not going to work on my computer on a phone, but it can. It can work on a tablet. It can work on an Android. It can work on any kind of machine pretty much. And lastly, we built in the reporting to satisfy the auditors and to help you review activity from time to time, or even let employers look at the activity of their remote clients, customers that is, or employees. So what does it look like? So basically to use it, a user is just going to be on their laptop and they're going to go to a preset link URL that they've stored on, bookmarked. In this case, they're going to go to gatekeeper.example.com/gatekeeper. And that website is hosted on the firewall, which we maintain. So it's up to date. When they do that, they're going to enter their Active Directory credentials. You got to love these. These are our original spec slides, so you can see from where we came as we built our tool. So they're going to put their Active Directory credentials in, username, password, and then they're going to get prompted for that two-factor code. I use the Authy app. So you get your single code, you punch that puppy in, then you get access to, and this again, conceptually, the workstations. Here's what it looks like today. What are we looking at here? We got a little more technical the last release.
Yeah, so what we're looking here are the RDP options that you can choose. This is one of the requests that we got very early from our early Gatekeeper users. When we first released Gatekeeper with Access Enforcer 5.0.0, we only offered the ability to connect using RDP as is with no options. But then we got feedback from our users, our end users specifically, especially those who have used RDP extensively. And they are used to having access to these RDP options to allow various features like using multiple monitors or sharing clipboards or playing sounds from the remote device and so forth. So like we always do, we roll up our sleeves, got to work, and created the ability to use those same RDP options. So in this latest, in 5.01, which we are releasing, there's a little cogwheel icon next to the device icon they can see on the screen. If you click that, you get these RDP options that you can set. And whether those options apply or not, they depend on whether they are allowed on the workstation side. Just a quick thing I want to mention. The nice thing about these RDP options is that users on different devices can have different options on a device-specific basis. For example, if one of the users has a massive Windows home computer at home with, let's say, 5 monitors and maybe for playing Microsoft Flight Simulator or something, but they want to use that same computer to RDP their Office workstation. So with the RDP options, they can choose the one there it says use all my monitors, and now they can use all 5 monitors for their RDP session. But if that same user also connects to their Office workstation occasionally from an iPhone, they can set different options for just that iPhone. These options are stored locally in the devices themselves, or more specifically on the browsers of those devices. So depending on where they come from, they can choose different kinds of options.
Cool. And this GIF we put in here, that's a new feature as well, right?
Right. Yeah, this one here, basically it lets your users know immediately whether their workstations are accessible or not. So what you're seeing here with the spinner thing, Gatekeeper is actually doing basically a status check on the computer that are on the user's approved list. And if they are up and running and reachable from Access Enforcer itself, they turn green, like you see. So like right after they log in successfully, this status check is done. And if you see it turn green, you know that it's up. If it's gray, then it's not. So it eliminates the need for guesswork about if you hit the connect button and if it doesn't connect, then you're like, wait, what's going on? But with this pre-connection check, you know, even before you connect, whether it's up or not.
That's outstanding. That could save a lot of time if a machine's been powered down or the internal network is somehow not working. That's
Right.
great. And again, this is partner feedback. All of these improvements from 5.0 to 5.01 were driven by a number of partners, and we've gotten some more recommendations that we're working on as well. And I think there's more work coming in this area. Aaron, you're kind of more of a network command line guy. So you were excited about this whole SSH option. I was thinking SS Minnow, but you know, SSH, whatever. But what does the SSH look like here?
It's pretty straightforward. Basically, we only have one option, which is the username. So when typically when you're SSHing to a machine, you're going to have a specific user that you're trying to target, like root or a named user. So we generate these convenience links, which could be copy and pasted, and OpenSSH knows how to handle a link like that. So you can just paste it in and hit enter, and you're SSH away.
So what are some scenarios where you're administering Linux machines or whatever? I mean, when are you using SSH?
It's personally, I use SSH to connect to a Proxmox server that I have, where I have a whole lab of devices that I manage for testing and things like that. So I use Gatekeeper to basically give me multi-factored access to that Proxmox server, and then I can manage my VMs or do other things like that from there.
So you essentially don't have to put two-factor app on the server or on the underlying machine. You use it through Gatekeeper to get that single-use access, and that serves that purpose.
Yep.
That's
yep.
Awesome.
And while I generally trust SSH to be exposed to the internet, it's pretty well battle tested. It's nice knowing that I don't actually have it exposed, and so when I click connect in Gatekeeper, there's that transient rule that pops into existence, and it's only there until I connect, and then once the connection is established, then I don't have to worry about it anymore. So I'm less concerned about exposing SSH, which is nice.
And that so like large companies that have a lot of tech guys that are logging into systems, this gives them that really tight visibility and control on that access, I guess.
Yep.
That's cool. Because, I mean, every time you use Gatekeeper, it creates a log event, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. So now it gets to the point where we're going to try to show you what it looks like from a user's perspective. This is not a real long video. It's actually quite short, and I'm going to hopefully try to we've recently created a YouTube channel, and we encourage you to follow it. We're starting to post some videos. You'll see here a handful. There's a video on the end user of Gatekeeper Windows client, a Gatekeeper walkthrough video, which is more of a technical setup, the Android user, and then the geofence feature, which is also in 5.0. We'll be adding more content here. Now, some of these are a little dated, but they do give you the gist of sort of what's there. We'll be updating them. And so in this instance, this is version 5.0. It is a silent video in the spirit of minimalism. And so we'll see if I can make this work here. And all you're going to really see is somebody going to the URL for Gatekeeper. When they get the prompt, they put their username and password with Active Directory here. And then they're going to pop in their user code from their Authenticator app. It's going to present the available machine. Again, this is 5.0, so it doesn't have the option to the wheel. And for the first time, sometimes it can save some of the stuff. You don't have to do it over and over. And then voila, end user is now RDP'd into his workstation. So hopefully you guys saw that. So that's live. It works. It's not vaporware. So now I'm going to try to turn this off. This is going to be the hard part. So we got to close that and go back to here. So that's, it's working. We got customers using it. They've created portals and all that. And now we're going to let Aaron kind of walk you through at a high level how to set it up, what is required, and some basic technical insights. I'll be looking over at the questions. Oh, actually, before I do this, I forgot this. I had some polls, and I really wanted to ask these. So I was going to launch a few polls real quick. They won't take but a second. So this first poll is, what's your approach to using RDP? And if you guys could take a second, then we can publish these results to help us get a better sense of who's using it, who's not, who might be using it. And we're not going to dwell on these. So if you guys would take these polls real quick, be very helpful. But when you look out there and you see that, destination port 3389, 3-4 million devices out there, And again, that's only on 3389. You got to believe a lot of folks are using it. So right now we're at about 60%. If we ask a few of you holdouts to wake up and take a look here, because real feedback is very helpful. So we'll give you another 10 seconds and then we'll shut it out. All right. We've got a statistically meaningful participation level. So we will close it out. And then the next poll is a little more technical, and it's more about the best practices. So all those advisories that we've all been getting and seeing, they all say do all this stuff, right? So what we're curious about is which ones you've found more difficult, if at all, to implement. I know I frankly don't like to use the VPN. That's just me. Gatekeeper, I could use that far easier. Also, personally find it comforting to know that I'm not putting my personal machine on the network. It's only using the visual presentation of that machine. So if we can get you guys to vote, we got about half of you. We need a couple stragglers to get up there to the statistically significant. So we'll go another 10 seconds on this one, and then we'll publish these numbers in a second. All right, let's close this one. And then I have one more on SSH, and I won't take as long, but we're curious how many folks use SSH. One of the reasons this is important for us is it will help us document and prioritize different deployment scenarios, use cases, because this is very much early ground for this. We'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about roadmap and future work. So we'd love to know who's using SSH, who's not, and what you're using it for. Some of our guys come from some very, very large companies, very large technical environments, where SSH is a de facto administration tool. And so they see that a lot, and then others don't. So cool, we got a good population there. All right, so I'm going to publish these real quick. The approach to using RDP. So hopefully you could see this. So if I did it right, yep. So here are the results there in terms of people's use today of RDP. So let's see, we got 21% staying away from it, 16% for support, 46% clients using it, 20% still without best practices, which that's not surprising. And most folks seem to be interested in something. So if it can help, which is great. So we'll have that one. And then the next one is sort of what are the more difficult elements of best practices. And I know this isn't everything. You can only put so many options in the poll. So it looks like the top one is the need for two-factor. And I was actually talking to somebody up in the DC area last week, and they said the drive for two-factor is out of this world right now. So that's not surprising. RDP Gateway is another one. VPN's kind of in the middle there. And so we had about 75% participation in the poll. So I think that's a pretty good number. Any other thoughts, Aaron or Lawrence, as you guys look at those? Or
I was personally surprised by the two-factor component. It's encouraging to see.
Yeah. So, when people want it, need it, and realize the value in it, then it becomes a lot. The interest and tolerance for putting it up is much higher, for sure.
Yeah.
And so here's a quick look at the SSH response. Again, we got about 75% participation, which is a pretty good number. So a little less than half don't use it, about a third for technical support. And most of those folks look like they may be interested in something. So that's great. So if you have use cases around SSH or options or other aspects of it, we prefer to build, enhance, and mold the tool for real world scenarios. So don't be bashful. We have a email. It's beta@calyptix.com. And you can, that'll stay alive for feedback, even though we're out of the beta, it will stay live for feedback. That's the best place to send it. So I do have 2 more polls I don't want to forget about, and I will raise those when Aaron gets into some of his technical content because they are relevant to that. So Aaron, I'll move the slides. You just tell me what.
Cool. So we're going to kind of just talk about a little, what it takes to get Gatekeeper up and running, and some common scenarios that you might use to help protect your users and stuff like that. So the first thing we're going to do is create and configure a portal, which is basically informing the access enforcer about your environment. So you're gonna tell it, what domain you want the end users to use, and you're going to tell it what Active Directory or directory service to talk to, to look up those users and to validate their credentials. And then we're going to talk about managing users, which will entail the kind of like 2-factor enrollment, stuff like that. And then we're going to go over creating rules, which are they define how users interact with the machines that you want them to have access to. And then we'll cover the deployment scenarios that I mentioned. So next slide, please. Yeah, so key concepts are the portal users, all those things. Active Directory or multi-factor authentication. Go ahead, Ben.
So the portal is a single instance of what?
So the portal is a single instance of a set of configuration parameters that define the endpoint that users will talk to, and also where credentials are looked up at. So you'll add a portal and say like, okay, use this Active Directory server at this domain, not Windows domain, but like URL domain. So you'll like example like com/gatekeeper. So your end users will go to that portal at that URL, and then that component knows to look up the credentials at this other Active Directory instance. So a portal is kind of like the glue that allows your end users to authenticate against Active Directory.
So in our initial implementation, we've really only contemplated one portal, but long-term the tool can be expanded. So like a large company that might have a directory service system for sales and a directory service system for a manufacturing unit, or maybe it's a conglomerate and they've got 5 different domains and whatever. They could have all those portals off of one system in essence.
Right.
Cool. Cool. All right. And then what's your favorite multi-factor authentication app?
Well, I guess it depends on what I'm on. If I'm on Android, I'm probably going to use the Google Authenticator. There's a number of different ones. There's some command line ones that are quite nice. But the one I use for iOS devices, I think it's called just Authenticator.
Okay.
So
I've got Authy, which I think a lot of partners use, and there are others. There's some paid ones. Some have free options, right?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. There's no shortage of free ones. So it's quite handy.
So that's the little process you were talking about there, right?
Yep. So the general admin flow is first you create a portal, then you invite users. to be associated with that portal, and then you create rules that allow those users to access their machines. And then after all of that's done, then the end users can log in and establish these sessions like we saw in the video earlier.
Cool.
Some requirements that you have to have. You need to have an Active Directory server currently. You'll also need to have a domain name that is pointed at the access enforcer. In our demonstration stuff, we used this abcproservices.com URL, and I think in the slides we used gatekeeper.example.com. So those are, examples of domains that you would use. You'll also need a SSL certificate. This isn't a hard requirement, but it's highly, highly recommended. Otherwise, when a user goes to the URL for the portal that you've defined, they're going to get a big old warning that says the site isn't secure, and you might scare them off. So we highly recommend an SSL certificate. You also need to select the best encryption available for for talking to your Active Directory server. Fortunately, we have incorporated a tool that helps you determine what the best encryption settings are. So in this case, in the image on the slide, once it's detected, it's determined that TLS 1.2 is the highest supported version, and that it doesn't do that the certificate name doesn't match, so it set that setting appropriately. So kind of a convenience piece there.
Yeah, this was a request from the partners, right, that were in the beta program.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And once you realize that it's not the easiest thing to go find that out, you guys kind of built this little widget to go figure it out.
Yep.
That's cool. Good. You ready for the next one?
Yep, please.
All right.
So another thing that was a partner request is the ability to get SSL certificates from Let's Encrypt. So we thought about it for quite a while and came up with a way to do it that was convenient and required minimal configuration on the partner's side. So pretty much all you have to do is plug in the domain that you're going to use, and it'll work. It'll get a certificate, and you can use it for Gatekeeper and all that jazz. So.
And then what's this renewal thing? So wait, aren't certificates expiring sooner? What's going on with all that? What's
So I think it used to be a year that they were valid for, and now it's shortened to 90 days. I can't remember what the specifics are, but the shorter the life is for a certificate, the better, because if the traffic was captured for that certificate and the certificate and key and everything is compromised, then anyone can decrypt that. And if you have the same certificate and key for a decade, then that traffic is all kind of compromised. So rotation is quite handy and should be
I get that
done pretty well.
That's something that I had a conversation with our other founder who's no longer active, Dr. Zhang, who's a crypto professor. And years ago, we talked about key rotation, how that was a strategy to add a significant layer of complexity. And that makes sense. So the more frequent rotation essentially makes it more expensive to the adversary to keep up with the current decryption method.
Yep.
Cool.
So and part of this tool and part of the problem we had to solve was renewals. So we needed a way to seamlessly handle that didn't require user interaction. So this was this Let's Encrypt feature does that for you. So there's no need to.
It's free, right? I mean, the Let's Encrypt certificate.
Yep.
So is there any reason? So I mean, this can be used for the front end GUI for using it when you're logging in to administer the device as well as the portal. So it's really no reason not to do it now, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason you might not want to use it is if you don't trust Let's Encrypt. In that case, you can upload your own certificate or do something along those lines.
Cool.
And then the other piece that you need to do is managing the users. And currently, because of the way we're doing two-factor and everything, there's an enrollment process. So each user is assigned a unique URL that they'll need to visit once to activate their multi-factor and establish their account as a valid Gatekeeper account. And so we do that by supplying the admins a URL that they can send over chat or email. And then we also have a portal-specific enrollment passcode, which is just kind of like an extra step in ensuring that they are who they say they are. And it also prevents, say their email was compromised or something like that. It means that whoever compromised that email can't enroll in Gatekeeper. And
that's a pretty important point, right? So you don't want to put that passcode with the URL.
Right. Yeah. You want to send it out of band because if you include the password or passcode in the same email as the URL, you've defeated the whole point.
I mean, essentially what I understand. So, to get to that point, they've got the username and credentials. Let's say they bought them on the dark web. Then they intercept an email that's got the URL and the code. They could basically go set themselves up as the authorized user, right?
Yep.
Because that is a limit in two-factor. It's based on who has the system to generate the code, right?
Yep.
If the bad guy gets that, kind of, it's the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, it defeats it. Yep.
Yeah. All right. I just want to make the point that's like, duh, this is really important. That passcode must go out of band. That, again, the lawyer will come out of me and say, that's negligence for a professional to send both of those components in the same communication, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Let's be clear. If this thing doesn't work out, I'm going to have a litigation practice. No.
Yeah. There you go.
So after they share that, sorry, let me put you back on.
No, you're good. So
now we're going to shift to the user. So the user gets all the stuff.
So the users receive their email or the URL from the admin. Our email contains a convenient template, templated kind of thing that has links to applications and stuff like that they can use for two-factor. But the next step will be for the end user to install either Google Authenticator or one of the free one-time password generating programs that exist out there. So then they'll go to the URL, they'll punch in their enrollment password, and then they need to scan a QR code and verify that their one-time password matches and that they've got everything configured right. And once that's all done, then they can see their devices and manage them. Well, I guess they can't manage them, but they can connect to them and use them and stuff like that.
Cool. So this process brings a lot of different pieces together, right? It brings the Active Directory component together. It brings the rules you're set up in the firewall and the Act Gatekeeper together. It pulls the Authenticator app together. There's a lot of pieces that it's kind of coordinating.
Yep. And so rules are, as I mentioned before, how we have defined basically what the end user will see when they log in. It specifies what machines they can access, and it uses kind of I'll just explain. So you can see in the image there, we have a rule name, a rule type, and the allowed users, and what the host is. So we can specify pretty much any combination of users that we want. Say you want Jill to be able to access QuickBooks, or I'm sorry, Tim to be able to access QuickBooks, then the rule that's currently in that display will allow that. So you're saying basically user A has access to machine B, and we want to give them RDP, or we want to give them SSH, and that's what rules do. So
cool. And of course, you got to enable it and save it.
Yep. Yeah. If you say you've got someone that goes rogue for some reason, you can go in and you can disable their rules, and then they'll instantly not have access to that machine. So.
Cool. And then if they get taken out of Active Directory, or what's the term in Active Directory? What happens if you make a change over there? What happens to their access here?
It's also disabled. So if their account is disabled, or their account is locked, or any of those things, then they can't log in. They won't even get to the 2-factor step or anything like that. So
cool. So it's kind of like using that identity management concept to be able to cut them off before they can get to anything.
Yep.
That's cool. So we got some deployment scenario conversation. Before we jump into that, there's another thing that we need some help on, and it may address some of the questions I think that have been raised. I haven't looked at them closely. But one of the fundamental elements, is Aaron mentioned, that we've got to know is, what directory service tool do your clients use today to manage their users? Now, what we've learned is that Active Directory is not the same in every deployment scenario. Right, Aaron?
Yep.
So we've got Active Directory on-premise, Windows Server. We work there. That's sort of the understood deployment. Then I think the guys have set it up so if you do Active Directory Azure services, the third option there, that there's knowledge base on that, right, Aaron?
Yep. Yeah, we have a how-to basically on how to set that up.
But then there's this intermediate thing where people are using O365, but they really don't use Azure AD services full blown. That's actually a different implementation. I understand.
That's my understanding as well.
And that one's, we're working on that. And then there's some third-party directory services. One partner mentioned Jump Cloud. There may be others. If there are others you're using or interested in, let us know. But this is what your current use is right here. So if you'd let us know this, we give you another 10 seconds here if you could wrap this up. This, of things that are important, this is important. This one and the next one, because if you guys, as MSPs, IT pros, managing users is a big part of going to be managing security. So you're going to want to be helping drive their directory service identity management tool in the scheme of things. So let's give you guys a couple more seconds, 5 more seconds. If we can get a few more people out there who hadn't woken up, take a look here. All right, we'll close this one. And then the next question is related, but this is where are we going in the future? So in the next 3 years, which of those scenarios do you think you'll need? And let us know what the primary, if you're going to stay on premise, if you're going to end up abandoning on premise and go with O365 or something else. This would be extremely helpful road mapping insights. So if this tool looks like it's something valuable for you, you got to connect it to a directory service, and it might be none, which means we need to add that to what we're doing somehow. So that's a big need to know for us, right? Because again, this is, if you didn't vote on anything, vote on this one, please. Appreciate it. I'll give another 10 seconds on this one. Don't want to belabor it, but without your input, we don't go in the right direction, guys. So we'll give another 3 seconds and close it out. And then we're going to share these results here, Aaron, if I can do this right.
Cool.
So let's go to the first one. Current. Unfortunately, I can't throw them up side by side. So we have to remember the numbers. So currently we got 67%, and we had 67% voted. And we have pretty good attendance today. So this is not a small number. So most folks are on premise today. Very small percentage AD, O365. Nobody full-blown AD as your services. And then 21% not doing anything. All right, so then let's compare that to, we've got to hide it first, and then have to share the future. Share the future, here we are. So, wow, that's a big change, Aaron.
Yeah. Cool.
Looks like O365 is important here. You got almost, a huge shift. So the server's disappearing. That's what we've heard, and we appreciate this feedback. It's really helpful. And so to give you an idea, 76% of people voted here, and not quite 100 people of you out there today. We've got a really good attendance, but it's a pretty large number. So that's a pretty large community telling us O365. A little bit interested in the third party. So those of you that are interested in the third party, we'd love you to share what you're looking at. And I think there's some protocols that make that easier, right? What are the protocols for connecting to those services, Aaron?
Well, it all depends. There's a number of things. There's OAuth. There'll probably be another one tomorrow. We'll see.
I put you on the spot on this one, didn't I?
Yeah.
But this gives us real clear guidance. We are working with some folks to figure out that second option, and it's a little tricky, but we think we can get there. So let's talk about some scenarios. 2 major ones here, right?
Yep.
So we'll just jump right into them before we easier to look at the pictures.
Yep.
What are we looking at?
So this one is remote LAN. I kind of think of it as the way things currently work with VPNs, right? So you've got your network, and it's all behind a firewall. You've got users that have their workstations or servers that they need to manage or things like that. And we kind of drop in nicely into this scenario. So remote users would basically, like you saw in the video, connect to the access enforcer through the web UI or the gatekeeper, interface. They log in, do their 2-factor dance, and then they see their host, and they can connect right to it and function like they were, on that LAN basically, now that they're on that machine. So,
this is the traditional RDP small business scenario, right? Domain controller there, workstation, CPA, lawyers, remoting into that workstation to do some work.
Yep.
Thinking Internet of Things here, what are some other ways to kind of leverage this to do that? Because I'm guessing that whatever that workstation can get to, the remote user, because that single session is with RDP, right? So it'll see whatever is on that screen.
Yep. Yeah. So anything that they can get to on the network or they've been granted access to, they'll be able to get to, IP cameras, things like that, file servers, sky's the limit. So
one scenario I think a partner mentioned to us had they were having a problem getting the accountant of the client their QuickBook files because the IT guy for the accountant didn't want to put a VPN to get securely on, and they're like, man, if we could just RDP to, sorry guys, if we could just RDP to the workstation that can get to QuickBooks, they can log right in, right?
Yep. Yeah, the not having a VPN or anything like that the client needs to install. Say they're at grandma's house or something, they can hop on grandma's machine and log in. They don't need to install any software on her machine or anything like that.
And you can provision that rule, at any time, right? And I mean, they got to be an Active Directory at this point as a user. So I don't know the parameters around putting somebody in Active Directory and so forth. But that's the limiting factor to create a rule for an individual, right? Yep.
Yeah, all of the two-factor stuff is managed and stored on the access enforcer. There's no extensions or configuration that needs to happen on the domain controller or anything like that. So it's pretty minimal configuration compared to existing.
Cool. Well, we'll be looking for some implementations there, use cases to help highlight the different ways that the tool can be used to provide secure authenticated access to whatever. I don't know if there's a barbecue grill yet, Chris, that connects to the internet, but may, or to a machine, but let us know. So this one's a little more complex. What's this one?
So this is remote to remote. So this is kind of like, say you have a remote secure network that is only allows access from a number of IP addresses. One of those IP addresses could be the IP address of an access enforcer, and then you can basically only allow authenticated multi-factor users to connect to these remote resources.
So this kind of brings together multiple sites with one gatekeeper implementation, right? So, so you can have the main headquarters with an access enforcer, or a data center with an access enforcer. You've just got to configure that second remote site to allow inbound traffic to correspond to the road. It's a little more networking, but you could really leverage one instance of access enforcer across multiple networks.
Yep. Even if they're non-access enforcer.
Yeah. So you don't have to rip and replace hardware, but sure would like to. All right.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would not want to have an access enforcer there. That's crazy. It's crazy.
There's some future work. I know we need to try to pick up the pace and kind of move along. I appreciate everybody's time. But what would be the top couple of things, Lawrence, Aaron, that you see us working on as we go forward with the Gatekeeper tool? And again, there are no hard commitments, no time frames, and we'll caveat that with, we don't like to promise things that aren't built. So what do you see sort of out there in the future?
Office 365.
Yeah, that's a new term.
Integration. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how about, I guess, other third-party directory service tools, possibly?
Yeah.
There's interest in Jump Cloud as well. Some of our partners use that. Also, another possible deployment scenario that people have requested, as well as the ability to connect to a destination host that's over an IPsec VPN. So that's another one. Those are what we're kind of looking at.
So we've talked about RDP and SSH. Are there any other applications that are kind of on the radar?
Lawrence, do you want to mention that?
Well, there's some relatively straightforward protocols that we can implement really quickly, like SFTP, which is the secure FTP, and as well as VNC. Those are some, very straightforward ones.
And then some are a bit more complicated.
Right.
Yep.
And
Right.
they may and there may be some particular specifics in terms of how things are controlled and the like. But we are looking at other applications, and we believe that there's opportunity, but we don't want to make any promises.
Stateful TCP connections are easy. Stateless are a little bit harder, and we're looking into the latter.
All right. I'll let those of you who are more technical can understand that. We got a lot of information in the portal. There are pages and pages of content, technical. There are videos. There's a 25-minute how to set up Gatekeeper video. And so that's all important. Let's kind of get into how do you get it and some of the business side of this. So thank you, Aaron. That was awesome. We'll kind of motor through some of this. So obviously it's Gatekeeper's on 5.0. The latest release now is 5.0.1. 5.0 and forward adds not only Gatekeeper, but also some significant improvements underneath the hood, complete update in the operating system to the newest OpenBSD, I believe, or the near newest. And then
The newest.
Newest? Awesome.
Yep.
If anybody who's really geeky and they want to go understand that security is what OpenBSD is about, there's an interview. It's about an hour long. You can watch it after midnight with a fellow by the name of Theo Durat. Theo's the leader of the OpenBSD community. A number of our developers are part of that. And you'll get a really solid gist of how committed to security the OpenBSD community is. And you know, people might say our GUI is dated and old, or gee, we like it a whole lot faster. Those are good options, and those are priorities, and we do our best there. Our number one commitment is going to always be security. We're not going to make any, excuses for prioritizing security. So, if you're interested and your clients are interested in a secure foundation, that's what we use, OpenBSD. So Google that YouTube video, Theo Durat, and you'll get a flavor. You can also go to the OpenBSD community and see the phenomenal amount of innovation and tools under the hood, including random access memory stuff and all these kind of things that help protect the system that are really key. And with 5.0, we added geofence to help do some things. We also in 5.0.1 worked really hard, and this delayed the announcements of sort of focus on Gatekeeper, but we focused on getting the boot speed significantly improved for the units, and we've added some warnings to not unpower the system when it's booting. It's got a hard drive, it's a complex system, it's a server. You don't want to do that. You don't want your clients to do that. So pay attention. Check out the release notes. Lots of changes in the change log. The guys have worked really hard for the last bit to get this done. Real quick on geofence, you can block the world in only 5 clicks, but it's stupid proof. You can't block yourself. So that was, so don't be worried there. Geofence, literally, it's a whitelist, blacklist approach, and then you have to deal with the unassigned IPs. You can do it by a map, or you can do it by a chart. You can get a heat map to see where the stuff is coming from. And it's interesting, if you look at the logs, you can see the shift from the IDS IPS activity to the geofencing, and that's now in the reports and in the logs. It differentiates why things are blocked. So in terms of getting the bits, new units bought now are shipping with 5.0.1. Units shipped for RMAs approved are shipped with 5.0.1. We are beginning to work with in-field upgrades for eligible units. By eligible units, we've reviewed the hardware in the fleet, and we've determined that certain units are not recommended for upgrade. Those are much older units. They have older processors. And so if you have a serial number below the 802,000 or 120,000, we recommend that you give us a call. We will work with you on upgrade options if you have an annual program to roll that over, Chris, right? I mean, and
Yes, we do.
what are you looking at here on the non-eligible upgrade options, Chris?
Well, for the partners that have monthly units, all those are eligible for refreshment, and that's part of our program where after 3 years of service, you can request a refreshed unit. And all the ones that go out will be eligible for the new software with the new software on them. That's the monthly guys. The folks that have got reseller boxes that are 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, they'll have to consider an upgrade. And we'll have case-by-case opportunities for those folks once they're identified.
And so with an upgrade on a reseller unit, I'm guessing we put the config on it and ship it and those things and the like.
Yes, we do. We'll make it as easy as possible for the transition by loading the current configuration and then adding the remaining time from the current unit to the new one. So the end user wouldn't walk away from 1 to 12 months of coverage they've already paid for. We just add it to the new unit. And that's how we would help get folks up to the new stuff. And then the vast majority of the units in the field are eligible for the upgrade. And we'll be getting to those on a priority basis, Ben, that you want to describe.
Yeah, so as we look at it, we really think it's important. You know, this feature, this functionality has been built based on our data, our knowledge, and what we know is happening. So we think it's most important to get those of you who are actively using RDP upgraded as soon as possible. We will work with you to minimize the number of units in your fleet that get updated so that is not overwhelming, because you can't roll it out all at once everywhere. And then also folks that are using RDP with access control restrictions on source IPs, if they want to provide more flexibility for their customers, Gatekeeper will enable that. And then those of you that have RDP disabled, the review of the config shows a number of folks used to use it, and we want to make that available if that's something they're interested in. Lastly, then move to SSH and then other units. As always, NFRs are going to be eligible for upgrades, but instead of starting with those are going to be on request. And we ask that if you're going to do that on request, it's for the purpose of implementing and evaluating Gatekeeper for your clients, not just as oh, by the way, because we do have a very real threat that exists in our client base, and our partners know it, and we want to work with you guys to cover that gap as fast as possible. And then obviously, if you're purchasing a Gatekeeper subscription on a unit, something you want, then we'll bump that up in the priority bucket as well. So that's kind of the where we are, and in terms of how we're going to do it. The $64,000 question, pricing, and this kind of has been a tough question because how do you do pricing? You can approach it a variety of different ways. You go to a sales guy and you can ask everybody what's it worth, and he prices $1 underneath that, right? That's not really been our style from day one. Our day one has been about mission of securing small businesses in the United States and Canada, and working to make that easy, community driven with some real core values. So as you look at how to price it, it's important that we know what this is. What are we talking about with Gatekeeper? Is it zero trust networking access control? Arguably it is. Essentially the problem that Gartner's identified is that traditional networks are configured in such a way that allow excessive implicit trust to unpatched vulnerable systems that leave enterprises exposed to attack, at risk. And we know that threat is real based on the data, the advisories, and the consequences that we're seeing in the small business space. So when you implement a zero trust network system, you get an adaptive, identity aware tool that gives people access that you know who they are to the things that they should have access to at the right time, place, and circumstances. So you eliminate exposing all those systems to the internet, so you significantly reduce risk. You also have the opportunity to replace VPNs if you want, move over to this. And with RDP, it's a very effective tool. We've used it for years.